Hello and welcome to another episode of Make Love Real, How to Create More Love in Your Life. I'm Mia Saenz, and in this episode with me is Kate Houston. And I'm excited about what she has to share with love. I met her a couple years ago, and this is going to be fun for us to have a talk that I get to host her on this time. So welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here and to be sharing all the tips and tools to help, expand our love and help us be more relaxed and free in that experience.
I love that. Wonderful. Would you like to share with people how you got to be into this line of work? Sometimes
Oh,
it's very interesting.
yes, I had my own very ridiculously complicated and tumultuous relationship.
Yes.
And my first calling in life was, for decades, I was a librarian. And so I went delving into research like only a librarian could to figure out what was going on, how could I resolve this, and was highly intellectual, but I knew that I needed to get into my heart. And so even though I had all these tools and wisdom and knowledge, I got to spend time with me to really pull apart the pieces, disseminate it, and then drop down in my heart and get real and have real conversations with me, a courageous conversation with myself, to
I
really
love
fall in
that.
love with all of me, including the shadow, which I was very good at avoiding.
I love that. That's really beautiful. So let's start out with what a courageous conversation with ourselves looks like.
Yes. Well, I think there's a lot of ways in which when we have, we don't have the greatest examples of relationship usually in our lives. The people
Mhm.
that raised us, the models that we've had are incomplete at best, right? Because they are doing the best they could. And
Right.
so we may model some of our things around that and how we share our fears, our sorrows, our hurts. We may model after that. And there's a lot of protection. There's a lot of armor we put up to keep us safe. And then we throw a lot of verbal arrows, right?
Mhm.
It's that external because we don't know what else to do. But when we can turn it inside and look behind the armor, and before we even get out, we don't have to get out onto a battlefield. We get to have a conversation with somebody else, and we get to share ourselves vulnerably. It's scary, but it's the best way to get over the fear. Like I like to say, we have a lot of anxiety and fear about what if, but the fear when you have a courageous conversation might be in those 3 minutes of getting over the fear in the moment and sharing authenticity. And then the freedom is on the other side because you've released the tension and you've
Mhm.
been real. But we have a hard time with that, right? And accepting ourselves first and foremost. That has to happen long before you can open up and feel grounded in who you are to have that conversation with somebody else.
I love that. It's very right on, very true. What I find to be so fascinating in my own experience, and I want to hear if it is in yours, most of us are very afraid at first in these transformational moments, right? We don't know what's going to come up. We don't know if we want to face it. But as we see that openness, like it expand open, the choices that we make are really, they settle into us like, aha, I've gotten to the other side. I
Yes.
love that. When I started to embrace that, more came, and more growth came, didn't it?
Yes. I think too, it is going to feel awkward, uncomfortable, and you may have a little more, the fear may uptick for a second or two, but when you walk through it and you've had the success on the other side, it dissipates. So instead of it being an utter, overwhelm and emotional moment, you start to get better at how your way of being is kind of like being the eye of the storm. You have to learn
Mhm.
how to navigate a storm, and once you can be
Yes.
the calm in the eye of the storm, it doesn't matter what's blowing at you or what somebody says. And I think so many women that I work with, and like anxious women particularly, which you may know too, like there's a moment where everything externally affects them completely because they don't know the grounding yet. So when we can really get our values down, our love values, those core values, and know them, and we're speaking from a place of my values rather than a place of I don't want to affront you and I'm worried about the response and maybe you're going to yell at me and what does that look like? It's a totally different way of being.
It is. Recently, and what you said just sparked this. Recently, I heard from a pilot that said, "You can't be afraid of the wind. You can't be afraid of the wind." And so that's wind that comes in to disrupt us, right? And we can't be afraid of where it's going to take us.
Yes. You have to literally know and have some grounding. And the point is that we can't stop. I like to say you can't guarantee that there will be no falling pianos or poisonous snake bites in your future. Like there's no way to know. But what it does is help you handle those situations.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be solid, and you can feel the feelings, of course, but it's not going to take you down so that you can't figure out what's next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or when you are in partnership, even to step forward and say, okay, we don't know what we're doing. This is totally new, and you're in it together in discomfort and unknown, and it's an intimacy builder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of a wall builder and defense that protects you from what you actually need to get through something.
It's the way in which we look at it. I love how you said that it's together, that intimacy builder, to just say, we don't know. This is new territory, uncharted, where
It,
most people go, what? Right? Cause
yeah.
fights and break up or something, right?
Yes. And I think too, we women, a lot of the successful women think they have to, tie a bow around understanding their emotions before they hand it over to explain to a man. But it's really in the moment of, I don't know what's going on, but can I share this with you? And you reveal in vulnerability that you're not sure what's happening. That's when men fall in love with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gives them an example of what to follow. And oftentimes with the women that I work with, I'm sure with you, that when they've done that, men come back and say, wow, because you opened up, I've realized this.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never realize this about myself, and share their vulnerability had you not opened the door for me to see how to do it.
That's really beautiful.
It's amazing. And that's the love. That's true falling in love, when you
Mm-hmm.
get messy together, right? And that's why you have to love all of you first, because if you don't like your dark, your picky, your, when you're selfish or whatever your things are, then it's hard to show those to somebody else, because you can't, nobody can love your pain away if you can't, like,
Mm-hmm.
give it love.
Most of us are afraid of being judged. Seriously, so afraid. I find that even though I've done this work my entire life since I was 24, and I'm no longer 24, I realized just this weekend, with a comment that was made to me by my beloved, I was like, I feel like I'm being judged, realizing that it was my own moment of false insecurity, right? And so we don't want to be judged, but we're not there. It's not meant as a judgment. It's how we're looking at it and how we're then again projecting it forward.
Yes. And I see,
Fascinating.
anytime you can see any of those upsets, some people call them triggers, they call them a bunch of anything that really, ooh, that feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
I help women understand that it has everything to do with you and nothing to do with the other person, because of the overlays of stories and history you have. And maybe it's a phrase you heard as a child, but you didn't remember until your beloved says it. And then all of a sudden you're back to 3 years old and you just react, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can capture and know that that's true, it's always the opportunity to work through something. And when we're mindful of our emotions, but we're mindful of that experience, we're able to slow things down and not react, but respond
Mm-hmm.
in the moment,
Yeah.
and connect with our partners and say, wow, that just triggered me. And what I like to remind my clients to do is say, and you did nothing wrong, because men always worry about that, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You said this, and it totally took me to a place. And maybe you don't even know what that is yet. And I'm totally wanting to run right now, and I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just sit in that. And then they're going to be, oh, I'm here for you, which is what you want.
Right. And men are problem solvers, so they are going to try to solve it. But if we understand that, then it opens that other space, like what you're talking about. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
It becomes a safe place, a safe haven.
For men too, because if they feel like just them being themselves is something's wrong with that, then it's no win. And then they're like, what's the point of the relationship?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we
Right.
spin in, and it breaks up, and we just don't know that language matters. So that
Mm-hmm.
small tweak can truly change the experience in a relationship and dating, and just
Right.
make a connection instead of disconnection, really.
And it makes it more fun, which is what you and I both wanted to talk about, the curiosity of relationships and how that just busts open so much greatness together.
Yes. And I love curiosity because for me, it's about play. When we really go back to when we're little, play is how we learned. Play is how we
Mhm.
grew wise. And there was no right and wrong in play. It's just figure things out, try something different, course correct. So instead of working on a relationship, if you get to be playful in it, then there's no there's no right and wrong in a relationship. Everybody's a little different. You get to figure it out together and in your dates and what works. And so going into this with awe and delight and laughter and joy, you bring in a different perspective on those dates. You're not looking for reasons to, toss them out emotionally already. You're looking for reasons to keep them as possibility in your future. And that literally changes so many women's experiences on those first dates. Doesn't mean you're not paying attention for potential red flags. You're still wise, but you're not going, oh, there it is. Or there, oh, there, that proves this isn't right for me, or whatever.
Mhm.
You were like, wow, look at this man. He's amazingly open. He's emotionally available. He's sharing this beautiful story, and he's sharing how he's accountable, and he doesn't want to do that again. Like, you get to sit in that beauty with someone.
Mhm. Also, what's interesting, I was going to ask you to share more of a tool around that, which I'd like you to, but also this allows us to know who's our people,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I could see that when you were saying that. It's like, I mean, we do this stuff all the time. We've brought it into our life this way, but when we're sharing with the viewers, we're also breaking it down. And
yes,
so what may feel normal and right for us all of a sudden becomes, like me just saying now, like a light bulb. Oh, wow,
yes.
that is another path right there.
Absolutely. And I believe too, so many of the women who use these tips of curiosity for the first dates, because that's usually the question I get is, how can I know quickly? Because they're
Mhm.
worried about being hurt, right? So if I give them some things to feel grounded in those beginning dates, then that's allows them to have for future dates, right? With those
Yeah.
people, if they're feeling aligned. So what I like to say is showing up. So it's not a job interview. It's you want to hear stories. And I tell women often, if you talk less on a first date, that's great because you learn a lot. And if you ask questions, I like to say the curiosity questions are who, what, when, where, how, because it's allowing them, that opens up open-ended, tell a story. And men are vulnerable and tell stories if you allow them to.
Mhm.
And then you can ask a follow-up, like, well, how did you handle that? Or what was it like with your siblings after that happened? And you can delve deeper, and they come out of those first dates, coffee dates, whatever, and say, wow, this was like, I had a conversation with you. That
Mhm.
felt really good. And
Mhm.
you're not worried about trying to present yourself, because if you're grounded enough knowing who you are, you're not trying to convince a man to like you. You're learning if he is correct for you and if you're aligned.
And that's beautiful. Is he correct for me? But it's about removing the desperation and having that playful curiosity. Because when we are feeling desperate, it shows. And we're not having fun, right? We're trembling or we're shaking or we're nervous or all of the stuff above.
Yes. And then there's no flirting, right?
Right.
Because we're like,
We
well, what does
love
that mean? What's that?
flirting.
That's too, like, flirting is really just the moment, being in the moment. And when we don't future trip about what it means and we're just allowing it to be now, it relieves so much stress. And then it's just,
Mhm.
I got to be now kind of flirty with him, and I connected right now with him. Doesn't mean there's a commitment or an agreement.
Right.
It just means this is nice.
Yeah.
Here now. And so I love that. And one thing I like to also remind ladies with these curiosity questions, like I mentioned, is that you don't want to use the word why, because it has a history of criticism behind it. And you may not
Mhm.
mean it, but it is sort of that push button. So if you use
Mhm.
who, what, when, where, how, it's different than a why question. So if you can avoid the why
Fabulous.
and shift it the other way, literally that tweak alone will utterly change your first dates.
It's interesting, these words, right, Miss
Yeah.
Librarian? It's interesting, these words that actually can hold us back,
Yeah.
emotionally, in our path, in our vision. Like for me, it was the word should, right? Or
Yes.
the word maybe. So I took both of those out for years to see what life would be like without the word, well, the word HATE, I still don't have in my
Yes.
vocabulary. But so it's interesting when we take words out
Yes.
that can misalign or bring in confusion or
Yes.
hurt. They
Yes.
really do shift and change. I'm curious.
Yes.
This is so off topic, guys.
Let's
I'm
go.
curious if you know, I was a librarian too. Do you remember
Oh, I did
that?
not. Oh, I forgot. I forgot that. That's right. No wonder we're so bonded.
I've been many things in lives, but that was one of the things.
Yeah.
Have you discovered why words do this triggering on us?
Well, I think what ends up happening is we don't know that the subconscious, when we have the conscious language like that,
Hmm.
the subconscious is driving where we've made unconscious agreements in our past, whether it's
Hmm.
from a past relationship or with ourselves or in our family. Like if you learned you're seen not heard, then you don't speak up, and that's
Right.
a thread. So like I always feel too small with men or whatever it might translate.
Hmm.
So we have to be aware of our unconscious agreements and kind
Hmm.
of do some work to identify what they might be so that
Hmm.
we can change the language. And you have unconscious agreements if you ever make absolutes like there are no good men out there. There are no men my age.
Hmm.
All the good men are taken. I mean, and we hear this over and over. And
Right.
when we really say that, we're making it true because
It's so
that's what
negative.
happens.
It's very
So
negative, isn't it?
yeah, but it just, and for some reason it's easier for us to want to believe that that absolute is true than to really do the work that
Hmm.
is something wrong with me that I'm not meeting him is the
Hmm.
real thing. Like that's where you have that courageous conversation. It's like, is something wrong with me? It's not really something's wrong with you. It's just you don't know yet what you
You don't
don't
have that
know.
awareness,
Unhook
right?
it.
Right.
And the empowerment is there's always a way to unhook from things. You're not a hopeless case. Nobody is. So we can get rid of those absolutes. So even if you capture yourself saying that, if you can add until now on the end of that to sort of, if you catch yourself beginning those kind of statements, then you get to slowly shift it because then that will
Hmm.
dissipate it. And then you might
Right.
even drop saying it at all.
Right.
And then your reality shifts.
I know that for myself, if I was to say something like that, I immediately would probably say, oh, that's not true. And that's okay because we're shifting it
Yeah.
subconsciously as well to say, or if it comes out of our mouth and we don't want to believe it, we can say, like you said, until now, or that doesn't have to be my reality or my possibility,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. And it gives us that opportunity to say, okay, what is maybe the belief about myself that actually is the driver
Hmm.
leading me to want to put that out there? And that's the courageous conversation. And then we get to be real and fall in love with those fears and walk through them. Because if we ignore them, they just
Hmm.
grow.
Right,
They
right.
just grow.
And the interesting thing about fear is that it's rooted in death, right? And
Mm.
so much fear that we have, if fear is rooted in death, they're so simplistic that they're not going to kill us, you know. But until we actually look at that and identify and almost laugh at it and say, "Isn't that ridiculous?"
Yeah.
We can't break the mesmerism around it.
No. And it just holds.
Yes.
And when we keep silent about it, that
Mhm.
grows it too. Just like so many things, secrets around our feelings
Yeah.
keeps that, radiating at that story. When we get to break free from it and have conversation, it
Right.
allows us to dissipate the energy around it.
I find it so fascinating to look at our life and to literally be able to shift and change what our, bless their hearts, what our parents and those above us trying to raise us with
Yes.
didn't have a handle on, because one thing, they weren't taught how to love or to raise themselves right. So we're doing it now, we're re-raising ourselves. So
Yes.
to be able to look at that journey without fear and to know and to see, even if we see, audience, even if you see Kate or myself or any of the speakers or your friends or somebody that you recognize that has made the journey, it gives faith that I have the possibility of doing this too. I
Yeah.
have the possibility of shifting. And that's why these shows are so important, I feel, because it gives the awareness that it doesn't have to be one way,
Yeah.
right?
And these tips and tools, especially if you're like online dating where there's the myriad of people from all extremes and you know what I mean, everything is out there.
Yes.
It's where your way of being is to handle it. Are you affronted by somebody who makes too quickly advanced, sexual advances to you, or you just say thank you for making that clear that you're not my match. Or it's how you handle that, because you can't
Right.
control what comes at you in life, the world, that there's things that happen. It's how you manage that in your
Right.
heart and realize, I often say to women, when you learn quickly, if something abrupt happens, whatever that is, somebody doesn't show up, they suddenly disconnect with you, whatever it is, I just say, thank you, God and the universe, for making it obvious that they're not correct for me.
Mhm.
And I trust you, which
Yeah.
is the hardest thing, right? Sometimes.
And if women, and because we're mostly talking to women here, if women actually practice that,
Yeah.
they can, it's easier the next time and the next time and the next time. The
Yes.
one man that you're going on a date with this Friday, say,
Yeah.
is not necessarily the one that you're going to be with. Why? Because you are magnificent and have choices. You
Yeah.
don't have to stick with the first one that is okay.
Yes.
And when we start to recognize this, everything shifts about us.
Yes.
So many women think that they're not worthy because some idiot, sorry, we're all idiots at times,
Mhm.
someone is not thinking, in the same alignment as us, and that's okay.
Right.
It's really
Exactly.
okay.
And one of the things I love too is you'll see, if some of my clients will see, like, they'll say, what about this person? And it's something outrageous. And I say, well, they have a match out there too. Doesn't that make you feel
Mhm.
good? Like, if it's something
Yeah.
really like left field for them, or,
Mhm.
maybe they're costumed in a certain way and you're like, it's going to speak to somebody.
It is.
This
It
is
is.
great. This is
Yeah.
great.
And we see this in all aspects of life. I have this rule called the 5% rule,
I love your 5% rule.
where 5% of the population will absolutely love us. And the scale can go a little higher, but let's go with 7 billion. If there's 7 billion people on the planet, which there's more, 5% is 350 million. So that's opportunities for love and for uh, mental shifts and for growth and for money and for everything, connections.
I love that.
Really does eliminate the scarcity and the lack and the fear. I just so want women to understand their greatness. And I know that these are a way in which to show it, but it's also the internal work that we each have to do. It's
Yes.
our own journey.
It's that courageous conversation within. And then when you
Yes.
feel grounded, you're able to say, I have something kind of scary to talk about. Would you be open to that?
Hmm.
I'm going to say this maybe unskillfully, which lets them know you're learning too,
Hmm.
and you're not trying to manage it, but you're going to be real.
Yeah.
And then they're open to sort of navigate with you, figuring it out. And it's
Hmm.
beautiful.
It is beautiful. So go try it, everyone.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Will you share with us what your free gift is?
Yes, it's the Fearless and Free Dating Mindset audio course. It's a 5-part audio course where we take some of the things we mentioned today just briefly and we go deeper to give you the tools to feel free and relaxed and in fun, flirty style when you're going on those first few dates. There's both a piece that is about, where your grounding is, and then there's some practical tips too that make it really easy for you to unfold into the experience so that you learn about the man and can make choices about whether he's correct for you or aligned with you right now or not.
Hmm.
And allow
Beautiful.
that to be fun and interesting and to recognize things, even if he's not the right match, that at least if there's things that you like, you say, wow, I really loved how open and vulnerable he was, even though whatever other things may not be the match. I'm looking for a man that open. It's a beautiful thing.
It really is. I don't know how many out there or if you do this, but I'm still friends with men that I've dated that I knew that weren't my match, but were an amazing friend.
Absolutely.
I've kept them in my life, and it's very powerful because we have that choice.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yay.
So I want you to share with us, and it may take us into another little
Okay.
conversation here, but I want you to share with us what's on your mind and heart that you want everybody to know before we end up saying goodbye.
I truly want to say you have the power within you. Every single one of you has the power within you to create a deeply loving and connected partnership you've always dreamed of. And that if you are able to step into a courageous conversation first with yourself, and then in partnership, you can create and maintain and sustain love for a lifetime.
I love that. And it doesn't always have to be with the same person, and it can
Oh,
be, right?
yes, and it will just feel genuine. It
Hmm.
can be sweet, bittersweet, but honest and authentic. I had a great breakup a great breakup where we were real about it and we cried because of the beauty of what we had together and grew, but our futures were not
Mhm.
aligned. And we didn't get mad about it. We just got to be honoring of each other's personal paths. But we
It's really
grew,
beautiful. Yes.
and we healed a lot, right? Sometimes you have a
Yeah.
healing relationship, not one that's supposed to be about the future, right?
Hmm. Hmm. It's interesting because love is so vast that it just reformulates into another energy of love. We don't have to be in love with them forever, but we can still hold the love for them
Yeah,
in friendship.
absolutely.
It's really beautiful. You are so beautiful. I love this. Thank you, Kate. This was lovely. It really
Thank you for
was.
having me. It's been a joy.
Thank you for being on. And thank you all for joining us for another episode of Make Love Real, How to Create More Love in Your Life. And we'll see you in another one.